You know, we use it every single day, but we barely ever stop to think about what it actually is. What if I told you that most of the money in the world isn't even real? That it's really just a shared idea we all believe in? Well, today, we're going to dive deep into the fascinating story of that idea, all the way from ancient bartering to the digital code that pretty much runs our world.
So, it all really boils down to this one simple question. Why does a simple piece of paper like this have any value at all? I mean, think about it. You can't eat it, you can't build a house with it, and yet you can trade it for almost anything you can imagine. To really understand this amazing magic trick, we need to go on a trip, back to a time before money even existed.
All right, welcome to the world of barter. Now, on the surface, it seems super simple, right? I have something you want, you have something I want, so we trade. Easy. But what happens when that simple, clean exchange just completely breaks down? Well, that's the fundamental problem that led to one of the most important inventions in all of human history.
This right here shows the core problem with bartering. It's got a fancy name, the double coincidence of wants. Just imagine for a second you're an apple farmer and you desperately need a new pair of shoes. So you go find a shoemaker, but he doesn't want your apples. He wants bread. So no trade. You're just stuck with a bunch of apples and no shoes.
As you can imagine, this led to some major headaches. I mean, you had to find the one exact person who had what you wanted and wanted the exact thing you had. Plus, how do you even measure value? How many apples is a pair of shoes worth? Is it 10? 100? Who knows? And of course, your apples could literally rot before you ever found someone to trade with. Bartering just wasn't going to cut it for societies that were getting bigger and more complex.
So yeah, clearly, humanity needed a much better system. And what came next is this absolutely fascinating story of innovation. It's like a series of solutions, where each new type of money came along and solved the problems of the one before it.
This timeline is basically our roadmap for the journey we're about to take. We start with just trading goods directly. Then we move to using objects that have some kind of shared value. From there, we get metal coins, and finally, we land on the paper money that we all know today. So let's see how this whole incredible story unfolds.
The first really big breakthrough was something called commodity money. People started using certain objects that pretty much everyone agreed had value. You know, things like rare seashells or blocks of salt or shiny beads. They worked because they were durable, easy to carry around, and everybody wanted them. And just like that, the double coincidence problem was solved. Now, that shoemaker would happily take your salt because he knew he could just turn around and trade that salt for the bread he really wanted.
Then came a huge upgrade, metal coins. By taking a piece of gold or silver and stamping it with a king's seal, its weight and its value were suddenly standardized. This was a brilliant idea. It made trade way faster, and most importantly, it built a real foundation of trust into the system.
But you know how it goes, right? Progress often creates brand new challenges. As trade grew and grew, merchants found themselves needing to carry huge amounts of heavy, clanking coins. This basically made them a walking target for robbers. The solution was definitely getting better, but it wasn't perfect just yet.
And this is where human ingenuity really starts to shine. About 1400 years ago in China, a revolutionary new idea popped up. Instead of carrying all that heavy, dangerous gold, what if you just carried a lightweight paper receipt that represented the gold? It was basically a claim check that you could trade while the real gold stayed locked up safe in a vault. Genius.
And the system was beautifully simple. You deposit your gold with a trusted person, they'd give you a paper note for that amount, and then you could use that note to buy things. The person who received your note could then go and redeem it for the actual gold if they wanted to. All of a sudden, money was portable, it was safe, and it was just so much more convenient.
Now, this system of paper money backed by gold, it worked great for centuries. But in the 20th century, we saw the single biggest, most fundamental change in the entire history of money. What I like to call the Great Uncoupling.
This system was known as the gold standard. The whole promise behind it was that you could literally walk into a bank and exchange your paper dollars for a fixed amount of physical gold. That promise is what gave the paper money its value and what created so much trust in the system.
But here was the problem. Global economies were just exploding. The amount of trade and business being done was growing way faster than the world's supply of gold. So a country's economic growth was literally limited by how much shiny metal it had sitting in its vaults. The whole system just became a massive bottleneck.
So, countries moved to the system that we all use today, fiat money. Fiat is just a Latin word for by decree. This is money that has value simply because the government declares its legal tender.
And, more importantly, because we all collectively agree to accept it as payment. It's not backed by gold at all. This gives governments incredible flexibility to manage their economies, but it also means the value of our money rests entirely on our collective faith.
So, the crucial point to understand is this shift right here. We went from a system where money was a claim on a real, physical thing, gold, to a system where money is a claim on a shared belief, our trust in the government and the economy that issues it. That's a huge, huge difference.
And that brings us right up to today, an era where the idea of physical money itself is kind of starting to disappear. And this is leading us to the next and maybe the most radical chapter in this entire story.
This number is pretty staggering. Over 90% of all the money in the world doesn't exist as physical cash or coins. It's just digital entries in bank computer systems, ones and zeros. For the most part, money has become pure information.
And we live this reality every single day. When you tap your card, when you pay a bill online, when you use your phone at the checkout, all you're doing is moving these digital numbers around. It's made transactions faster, more global, and incredibly convenient.
And now, we're right at the edge of the next great evolution, cryptocurrencies. This is a radical new idea, money that isn't issued by any government or any bank. Instead, it's run by a decentralized network of computers with a totally transparent public ledger called a blockchain that records every single transaction. It's a system that's designed to be borderless, transparent, and almost instant.
So, after this incredible journey from apples and shells all the way to digital code, what's the big takeaway? When you boil it all down, what is money really?
Well, it turns out, regardless of its form, whether it's a shell, a coin, a piece of paper, or a line of code, anything that serves as money has to do these three basic things. It has to be a medium of exchange to make buying things easy. It has to be a unit of value so we can price things. And it has to be a store of value so you can save it for later.
And this, right here, is the single most important lesson from our entire journey. The form of money has changed again and again, but the one constant, the invisible foundation holding the whole thing up, has always been trust. We accepted shells because we trusted others would too. We accept paper money because we trust the system behind it. Without that trust, it's all just worthless.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty thought-provoking question. Money isn't really a thing. It's a technology. It's a shared social agreement, an idea that we all choose to believe in. And as we've seen, ideas evolve. So if money is just the current idea we all happen to agree on, what do you think the next big idea will be?